Welcome to the Rabbitohs Top 4 podcast, proudly presented by What If, official travel and pathways partner of the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Here are your hosts, Mark Ellison, Shannon Donato, and Jeremy Monahan.
Well, welcome everyone to the Rabbitohs Top 4 podcast, powered by Audio Technica and proudly presented by What If. What If has you covered for accommodation, flights, car hire and more. So if you're looking for a holiday, travelling for business or need to get to the game, visit whatif.com/Rabbitohs. What If, it's Aussie for travel. My name's Jeremy Monahan. I'm the media manager here at the Rabbitohs, and I'd like to welcome my co-hosts Mark Ellison and Shannon Donato. Good morning, gents.
How are you, Jez? Great to be back again.
Very well. Looking forward to this, our second episode of the Top 4 podcast. Shannon, how are you this morning?
Very well, thank you, legend. How are you?
Very well. You've had a good brekkie?
Yes, I've had a great brekkie, thank you, from the great cafe here at the South Sydney Juniors. Bacon and egg rolls, I can highly recommend them, although they get a bit rich after 4, but they're pretty good.
Actually, mate, you just got a bit of a crumb on your chin there. No, not that one, mate.
not that chin.
And I'd like to welcome our special guest, our first guest on the Rabbitohs Top 4 podcast here on episode 2, our CEO, Blake Solly. Good morning.
Thank you, Jez. I'm honoured to be the first guest after listening to last week's podcast, and also I'm glad that the first food joke was cracked before you got to intro me after last week. I was a bit worried if I had to be the first one to break the ice, but very honoured to be here and great to be the first guest.
Very good. Now, our first discussion point that we go to each episode is something that we've learnt this week. Shannon, we'll start with you this week, something you've learnt.
Yes, the Rabbitohs, we really are a family. Recently had the game in Mudgee, and at one stage I sort of had to pinch myself. I was at a table. There were a stack of old boys out there, Les Davidson, Darryl Neville. I think there was about 25 old boys, and we're sitting there with the members, and we're having dinner and, breaking bread, having a glass of wine or whatever. And I just thought, we're all different parts of the Rabbitohs, but we're all a family. To see the members with the old boys, there were some sponsors in there, there was some management. I just really reminded me of what a family the Rabbitohs are.
Very good. Hello, what have you learnt this week?
Well, something along those lines as well, Jez. I mean, it's always a magnificent atmosphere out at Mudgee, and to take so many of the Rabbitohs out there in different capacities was fantastic. But I did learn that there's some lovely wineries out at Mudgee on the weekend. And my favourite one was Robert Oatley's. I mean, they took us on a tour there. The wine was magnificent and just gave us that Mudgee hospitality that everyone's talking about.
So there are some wineries in Mudgee, are there?
Yeah, mate, yeah. If we could have got you out of bed, you might have been able to take you there, mate. But anyway, yeah. There's some fooderies too.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that.
Shannon was out eating the grapes before they turned into wine.
I can tell you, I was talking to the mayor and he was saying how that match brings $1.8 million into the economy last year, and economic benefit analysis showed that. And I said, listen to the mayor, there's a fantastic fellow. I said, listen, $1.8 million last year's fantastic result, but I saw Shane Richardson in the local bakery and I reckon you're going to break $2 million this year. Very comfortably. Very comfortably.
What about the quality of the designated drivers out there at the wineries, Ella?
Yeah, very good, Jez. Who were they again?
That was me.
No, you did a great job, mate. You did a great job. You didn't say a word.
Yep.
Because actually you were pissed off because you couldn't drink. That's the main thing.
I babysat your sonnies all weekend.
You did too.
Blake, what have you learnt this week?
I think similar to the conversation with the boys, I've learned that the passion for the club of our members particularly knows no bounds. We had the Menu Log Team of the Decade event last night in Sydney. We had members drive from Wollongong, Canberra, the Central Coast, just down for one night to spend some time with the Team of the Decade and the rest of the club. And again, it's just a great reminder of why we consider ourselves the pride of the league and why our members are so important to that.
Speaking of the breadth of our support, the thing that I've learnt this week is just how broad it is. So I was having a look at the insights into the podcast, ours and also the boys at Rabbitohs Radio and the listeners that we've had. We had listeners last week in the UK, the USA, Canada, Germany, New Zealand, Thailand, France, Israel, Hong Kong, Norway, Ireland, the Philippines and Papua New Guinea.
You know what that tells me, Jez? The COVID lockdown's not good for people's mental health. And we're not helping either.
If we're their level of entertainment, this was the number one. This was the number one for
There's
me.
a podcast drought around the world, isn't there?
There's a fella called Ryan McGee. He's a global ambassador for the Rabbitohs radio crew. Big shout out to chaps Mavo and Brownie. They're doing a great job at Rabbitohs radio. Ryan is from a town called Mechanicsville in Virginia in the USA. Has anyone heard of a better town name than Mechanicsville? Unless there's a plumber's town or something somewhere, that's number one for me.
Yeah, it's good, Jess.
Sorry,
Obviously not. We haven't. No.
Is there something you want to tell us about mechanics?
Let me find my laugh track.
Actually, we go back and start that one again. Big cheerio to Mavo too. He was almost on his deathbed on Sunday, on Saturday. So he got up to Mudgee and performed very well as some of the players. So he was fantastic.
I can tell you, after being at Mudgee, I was almost on my deathbed.
Yeah, we noticed you weren't in the office on Monday.
That's right. I had a lot of meetings.
Eatings or meetings?
A little bit of A, a little bit of B.
Very good, righto. Well, that's what we learnt this week. Now, we'll head into our first top four topic for the morning, and it's the top four with Blake Solly, a chance to get to know Blake a little bit better. Blake, can you tell us the top four things that our listeners may not know about you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I grew up on the Central Coast of New South Wales. God's country, as the guys here will attest to, because that's what I call it any time I'm talking about the Central Coast. I went to finish school at St Greg's at Campbelltown, so was around the same year. I was in the same year as Trent Barrett, who's the Canterbury coach, and the year above me was Trent Robbo as coach. They were far better players and far better coaches, so they've gone on to careers on the field, and then I've gone on to one off it. I studied law at UTS and was a lawyer for a decade before moving into sports administration. And the fourth thing is that I'm a huge fan of music.
Very good. Tell us a bit about that time at St Greg's. You mentioned a couple of big names there, but you played some football yourself. What was your position, and did you enjoy playing, or was it a career off field that you were looking at?
I love playing. I just wasn't very good at it, really. That was the only problem. But
That can sometimes inhibit your career.
Hey, some guys can have a great career like Shannon.
We know how you feel.
We just conned everyone.
It didn't stop me.
No, I was very ordinary, but I played. Some of my first memories of almost being a kid were going along being the ball boy for my dad. He was coaching some junior teams at St Edward's at East Gosford, the club there, and so I was 3 and just carrying a ball around on the side of the field, and then started playing at 5 and kept playing. Played at schools in the second team at Greg's, but just all the time loved playing, because for me it was about making great friends and friends for life in many ways. The things that it taught you playing rugby league, even if you're as poorly talented as me, it was all about teamwork and rugby league, which is so different to many other sports. There's nowhere to hide when you're on the field. You've got to run the ball up and get tackled and show a lot of courage. And then also for me, just the people that you met through your life in rugby league was amazing. The first two things I did when I moved to the UK, I didn't know anyone in Leeds, but I got a job first and foremost, which was important. And then second one was join a rugby league club, because I knew, even though I didn't know anyone in Leeds, if I played rugby league, I'd have a lot of friends really quickly.
And so that move to England, was that designed to play football or a chance to travel? Or
A chance to travel. I'd done a 6-week tour of the UK, like a lot of people do, in their mid-20s, and I thought, I can either put my head down and sort of go down the career path to associate and partner as a lawyer in Sydney, or that was probably my last chance to get out and see a bit of the world. And I thought I'd do a 2-year working holiday and go and play a bit of footy, try and see as much of Europe and Asia as I could, and then come back. And within 6 months, I met my wife, Claire, in Leeds, and then stayed 2 years, became 11 years, played a lot of footy, saw a lot of the world as well. So I was really fortunate, but it was anything but a plan to stay that long. But I was always wanting to see it. And the other thing I wanted to do was a lot of Aussies go to London, live in Shepherd's Bush or Clapham and hang around with other Aussies. I was really keen to do something completely different and go to a town where I didn't know anyone, and particularly in the north where league is everywhere and cricket's a big sport, and so at least I have something to talk about and just do something a bit different.
I just remember the first time I met you in England,
Yes.
Blake.
Valentine's Day.
I'm surprised I'm still employed at the Rabbitohs since this day. We're just travelling over the World Club Challenge, and Richo and I met you at some pub, I think, or a restaurant. I can't remember where it was, but
If it was with Rich, I was at a restaurant.
it was the Midnight Bell pub in Leeds.
well, there you go. Yeah. There you go. And anyway, we've been travelling, had the jet lag and that, and I was there talking. On my first sip of my second pint, I'm talking to Blake and sitting there like this, and I just went. And it was nothing to do with the conversation. It was just the jet lag, and I've never done that again. I've never done it before or after. So I'm lucky I'm still here, I think.
To be fair to Ello, the jet lag was pretty bad. It was also -2 outside, so. You went from -2 outside to about 38 indoors in the pub because it was a pub that was full of people and a couple of pints of bitter, and I think anyone would have gone to sleep.
Richo was next to me, elbowing me and trying to wake me up, and I didn't know what was going on. It was an interesting Valentine's Day, the three of us going out in Leeds. So we'd pull into these restaurants for trying to find somewhere to eat, and there were all these couples eating, and there was Ello falling asleep at the table. And everyone knows how patient Richo is, so he had no problem with the fact that all the restaurants were full of couples out on Valentine's Day, and we were struggling to get a place. Anyway, we got to a pizza shop. I think Richo kicked a couple off there, sat us three down. So.
Very good. Which clubs did you play with over in England?
I played at a club called Leeds Ackies. That was the only club I played at, but it's a really it's a great club, and it was created by. So there's 3 universities in Leeds: Leeds University, Leeds Met, and Trinity and All Saints College. And the class divide in the UK is still quite big. So working class people play league, and everyone else plays rugby union. And that club was built out of guys who travelled from other parts of the UK who'd never played rugby league before, played rugby league at uni and wanted to keep playing afterwards. So we had in the team probably 5 lawyers, a couple of dentists, a GP. It was a sort of a strange old team, which was great for the sort of former mining towns of Yorkshire and Lancashire when you turn up as a sort of a student team. They, you could see the eyes light up on the, here we go, this will be some good fun.
Kill the Tories.
It was, so we had to deal with that, but it was great. And then because we were based in North Leeds, we got a lot of the guys from the local area as well. So had this great mixing pot of guys doing trades and apprenticeships with GPs and lawyers. And the one thing that bound everyone together was the sport and loving rugby league, and then finishing the game and having a few beers off it and heading out into town in Leeds and enjoying themselves and getting to know each other. So it was just an amazing club. And Jeremy Shires, who set it up, deserved a great deal of credit because it was his vision, and it still goes today. And there's a lot of people who think very fondly of it.
Very good. You mentioned the law degree that you did in Sydney. Was it the idea to practice in law, or was it just a way to get into other areas in business?
No. I practiced. So I practiced for almost 10 years altogether. I did 5 years here and 5 years in the UK. I remember really early on at the first firm I worked at in Sydney at Hunt's, the HR woman kind of said, I don't think you'll be in this long term, Blake. And I was a bit offended, really. I was only like 12 months, and I think she was probably right. I think she realised I maybe didn't have the patience for the usual career path of lawyer, associate, senior associate partner. She probably thought I was a bit impatient, maybe a bit too entrepreneurial for that. So when the job came at the RFL at the time, in the legal team there, it was a bit of a welcome relief to private practice. And then within 2 years, I was doing operational and commercial stuff and very little legal work at all, and then became the general manager at Super League.
So I was going to talk there about the general manager position at Super League. When that was offered to you, what did you think? Coming, I guess, originally from looking at the way New South Wales Rugby League, ARL, NRL was operating, did you see opportunities to bring that sort of level of management into the Super League, or were there gaps that you could see in Super League that you thought you could improve?
The gap I thought was that until my appointment, Super League hadn't had a dedicated focus. It had all been the RFL operating on behalf of the game, from the England team right down to grassroots. And the Super League clubs, who I always thought were the real value drivers in the sport there, the Super League competition drove the TV revenue and the commercial revenue. It never had a dedicated person or a dedicated focus. So for me, the opportunity was, well, now we've got a chance to get these 14 clubs as it was at the time, and then 12 within 12 months to try and get on the same page and realise some of the value that they had. And there's some great clubs over there: Warrington, St Helens, Wigan, Leeds, Hull, Holcow. Just the support for the clubs in the towns and the areas where they're from is anything that matches here. It's amazing. And we had a couple of good years. We sold out Old Trafford for the first time ever, which was amazing. We had a wonderful World Club Series when South came over in 15, and we did some really, really good things with the comp. And I think we're on a pretty good track.
Did you actually live in Leeds when you were there?
Yeah, I lived in Leeds for 11 years, and then worked in Manchester the last 2. And I can see Jezza and Shannon grinning now because they know what a huge fan I am. Manchester's just a wonderful city. So is Leeds, but I loved working in Manchester. I thought it was a really lively city, but because of the it is hatred between Leeds and Manchester, I'd have to go back to Leeds and not talk about how much I was enjoying working in Manchester. So I was like, it's awful over there. You don't want to go over there. And I was loving it. But no, it was great. Leeds is a really good city. We lived not far from Headingley Cricket Ground and Rugby League Stadium. It's also where the universities are. So we were just blessed, really. We were just outside, just far enough outside of it to be quiet, but close enough for the activity. You know, the pubs in Headingley on a Saturday afternoon when the rugby league or the cricket's on a heaving, and a lot of young people. It's got a real vibrancy. So,
talking about the old days of hatred there between Leeds and Manchester. I remember when I was over there, a mate of mine, Paul Carr, was playing for Hunslet, which was, in the second division there, and they played out of Ellen Road, and Leeds were playing Manchester in the soccer. I don't know, it wasn't called what it is now, but they were the two-gun teams, and when they played at Ellen Road, the Leeds supporters had to be in the ground an hour before kick-off, and then they were locked in. So the people from Manchester could come to the train station and then get in. They were allowed to go an hour before, and then the Leeds people were let out to stop the fights and the hoodlums getting into each other. That's massive, the hatred there.
If you Leeds City Centre on a Saturday, particularly now with Leeds United back in the Premier League, it's just every pub's full. Sorry, not right now, but outside of a COVID time, the pubs are full. Everyone's singing the Leeds United songs. And then, like you said, they just walk down to Ellen Road, get in the stadium, and then about half an hour later, all the opposition fans get off the train and walk in. So it was, for me, I was so naive about it too. You'd get to Leeds and sort of think, I'm going to the city centre on a Saturday, and something, whoa, mate, be careful, because don't go to that pub, or do go to that pub, or don't walk down that street. But the passion for Leeds United in that city is extraordinary. It's great to see him back in the Premier League.
I think Russell's a big Leeds United fan too, isn't he?
He is, yeah. He's a huge Leeds United fan. I think he narrated the documentary about their rise to the Premier League. The whole time I was in the UK, they weren't in the Premier League. They were probably their worst decade ever. They actually dropped down to 2 divisions below the Premier League while I was there. But the fan base was huge. They're a big worldwide club as well because of their success in the 70s and the 90s. So if you live in Leeds, there'll be probably a couple of thousand Irish people travel over on a Friday night to watch Leeds United at Ellen Road and go back on the Sunday, because they're just such a big club and they're back where they deserve to be.
Just thinking about your time at Super League, you took a few risks where there as well. You introduced is it the Super 8s? Was that the concept?
Yeah. Now passed away, the Super 8s, but we introduced the Super 8s, and we wanted to try and, the whole aim of it was to restore promotion relegation, which is really important, and that had gone out of the game, and do it in a way that was sustainable so that clubs weren't having to go bust trying to get in or go bust when they went out. And I think it was a bit of a missed opportunity. I think if they'd have stuck with it, it would have continued to grow and do really well. But I can also understand that for some of those clubs, the uncertainty in the fixture list at the end of the season was pretty hard. But we were just trying to, again, I think create a Super League competition that everyone wanted to be part of, that it was really vibrant, that the broadcasters loved it, and that the commercial opportunities were there, because the game is so much smaller than rugby union and soccer and cricket, and you really have to fight hard to get any coverage at all, particularly in the national press. It's almost the opposite here, where you're sometimes trying to get out of the press. There we do anything, like the final game of the 2015 season, the league leadership, which is big there, the minor premiership, came down to the last game, and there was a game at Wigan and a game at Huddersfield that Leeds were playing in, and whoever won the game got the trophy. And rather than hand it to them a day later, we said, we'll get a helicopter and fly between the two grounds and present it to whoever won it. And so I was unfortunately the person in the helicopter having to make the decision. Leeds were 12 points behind with about 6 minutes to go, and Wigan were winning easily. So I told the guy, I should probably get towards Wigan because this is going to Wigan. Leeds performed one of the most almighty comebacks of all time. Ryan Hall scored a try with the seconds after the bell, and we had to swing it around and get to Huddersfield. And we landed at Huddersfield, and someone said, there's a car waiting for you. And so I thought, the car that was waiting for us was the car. It was a young Asian family from Huddersfield who were just picking up their kids from gymnastics next door. I jumped in with the Super League trophy and had to jump back out and get the next car. It was just...
but they'd have been thinking, geez, my kid's good at gymnastics.
Prizes have increased, haven't they? She could just do a cartwheel yesterday. But it was so... And like a bit of a circus, but that was what we needed to do to try and...
Getting an important call.
No, it's not me. So
it's my phone. I left it over all the time. Sorry, guys.
Good on you. Like.
Sorry, guys.
But that's what we had to do to try and get publicity in the game because Premier League football is everything in the winter, and then if you've got a Euro Championships or a World Cup, the summer's dominated by soccer, and then rugby union and cricket take the rest of it. So you have to be really, really creative to try and get in the front page or the back page of the paper.
Jez, Blake's probably too modest to talk about this, but we all love the Magic Weekend concept in the NRL, but again, that was one of his initiatives over in the Super League. It was very successful over there and it's very successful here. So, a lot of the learnings there that Blake had over in the Super League have obviously transferred over here to the NRL.
Yeah, Magic was Nigel's originally, and then we kind of just kept building on it. Took it to Man City, the Etihad, and took it to St James Park in Newcastle, which were two great stadia and steeped in football tradition with Newcastle United and Man City, but they were so great. And what people don't really know is if you go to a Premier League soccer game, you can't have a beer in the stands. You can't drink a beer in any level of soccer in the UK where you can see the ground. That's the rule. So if you're in a corporate hospitality suite at the game, they shut the windows, pull the blind down when kickoff starts. If you want to stay in drinking, you can, or you move out and you can't drink.
Wow.
So the soccer stadiums...
wouldn't be much fun, would it?
I'd find a different job if I went.
It's like those poor security guards that have to sit on the sideline but face the crowd. They can't watch the game.
But then for rugby league, you can. So these security guards weren't sort of used to the rugby league fans who love a beer, love a song, love food. And we used to say to Man City all the time, look, whatever your food order and drink order is, double it and give it some more consideration. And that's
I thought you were going to say because Shannon's coming.
Sorry, mate. We need a counter on these bloody food fat jokes. How many are we up to already?
You must be proud that the size of the three regular hosts and you're the one that cops all the food jokes.
I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the Barrows to come back. Don't worry about that. That was menu log ringing me, by the way.
Chasing the bill.
Actually, Jez, I got to admit, I am going to do something about my weight because the other night Gab and I were being a bit intimate, and and she told me.
Hang on. Hang on,
mate. Now we know
it's
we're on
okay. It's okay. I know we're on air. No, it's all family safe, and we'd finished being intimate, and she said
that was quick.
She said that was quick.
No, that was long.
But she said I rolled over twice after we were done, and I was still on top of you. I think you need to lose some weight, Shannon.
Oh dear.
Is that your joke of the week?
So, speaking of family, you've got a young family.
Yeah, so my daughter Francesca, she's 12. She plays rugby league. She's been fortunate enough to be selected in the Rabbitohs touch team for State Cup and tag. So, she's just become fascinated and really passionate about rugby league since she's arrived in Australia and living in the area and going to school in Malabar. I suppose it was pretty daunting for her. She turned up the first day with a really, really thick Yorkshire accent, sort of as like Sam, Tom, George, or Luke, any of those guys. It was probably thicker because I'd come out here a bit earlier before they arrived. So she'd just been surrounded by West Yorkshire folk, and so she got there the first day and was really overawed because the the kids kept coming up to her and asking her to talk. Yeah, can you say something? Because hear this quite weird accent. So I think she realised early on that living in Malabar and Matraville, that supporting the Rabbitohs was a pretty important thing. So she hooked onto that as a way of getting to, I suppose, getting accepted in school, and has gone from that to now watching every game. She travels with me to some of the away games. We travelled the preliminary final in 2019. We went to Canberra together, and driving back and didn't say a word to each other till Berrima. We were just so disappointed and frustrated, but also very proud of the way the team played that night. But we both took it pretty hard, and it was only to Berrima I said we probably need to get some breakfast and start talking. Pulled off and had a coffee and had some breakfast and started talking. But no, she loves the game as well, which is great.
It's fantastic. And you mentioned earlier on your love of music.
Yes.
Talk us through that.
Well, I always loved music, but another great thing about the UK is it's just music central, right? The whole city or the society revolves around great music. If you go out in Leeds on a night out, people will ask you, how was your night? And the first question inevitably people respond with, the music was great, or the music was crap, or the music wasn't good enough. And so it's almost the first thing that people criticise is the music, and that suited me. So I just sort of immersed myself in the music, and then living in Manchester, I've always been a big fan of bands like New Order and the Smiths. So working in Manchester was great. You were walking around these streets where this great music was made, or these people were discovered or played. So for me, I just always loved music, but that kind of accelerated my passion for it living in the UK.
And the lure to come back to the Rabbitohs, the CEO of the mighty Rabbitohs,
yeah,
the dream job.
It was, and I was really fortunate enough to the opportunity came up when I was probably ready to come home, and also ready to finish my time at Super League. So, and my wife had always said if we were going to go back to Australia, Francesca had to be before high school, and she was just about to start year 4. So the timing was absolutely right. And I'm not sure I had a 13th winter in me as well. That was the other subtext. I think that last winter probably finished me off. I don't think I saw the sun for 3 months that winter. It was just one of those winters where it was pretty cold, but it also just grey and drizzled for 3 months. So when the opportunity came to come back and kind of be with my family and friends again was too good an opportunity to refuse. And to join a great club like this, it was my dad grew up in Ridge Street, Surrey Hills, played for Chelsea United, and kind of to honour his memory by being part of this club was really important.
Yeah.
Very good. Now, we mentioned your love of music there a few moments ago. We want to go through your top 4 albums of all time. Yep. What have you got for us?
Yeah, it says a lot about me, these albums. So my favourite album of all time is Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. I think a lot of musicians and music fans love that album. It's stood the test of time. I think it's 40 years old now, maybe 45 years old. So great album. Hourly Daily, which is an album by UMI from the 90s, which is a concept album about living in suburbia, and I was growing up on the Central Coast at the time, so I could identify with a lot of the music and still love UMI to this day. I'm a huge Elvis Costello fan, as everyone who knows me knows, so I'd probably say this year's Model is my favourite Elvis Costello album, and an album by an American band from Chicago called Wilco, 2001 album Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. So that's not that diverse selection because they're all kind of white middle-aged songwriters playing alt rock music, but I just love those albums, love the lyrics, and love the musicians who played them.
Well, I guess if anyone's listening to this podcast on Spotify or on Apple, you can jump over to Spotify or Apple Music and listen to those albums. It's a bit different to your list, Shannon, with NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Pet Shop Boys and these sorts of guys.
Tom Jones.
You forgot Milli Vanilli, Jim.
Milli Vanilli. Oh.
Very good. All the classics.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for coming in this morning, Blake. Appreciate that insight.
No, thank you. I thought I was invited because my office was next door to the studio, so I was the first guest. I was the closest by.
The reason he ended up, you heard all this laughing, stuck his head in. What's all this? Oh, yeah. Sit down, Blake.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. All right. We'll be back in just a moment. Now, the official Rabbitohs merchandise store is located now down at Heffron Park Tennis Centre on Bunurong Road in Maroubra. It's right near where the High Performance Centre and Community Centre is going to be built. So if you're looking for a Rabbitohs jersey, a polo shirt, T-shirt, hat, flag, anything that you can think of Rabbitohs, then head down to Heffron Park and see the merchandise team and they'll help you out. Or you can go online at shop.rabbitohs.com.au. Now, Blake, you spoke about your daughter Francesca. I hear one of her life goals is to work in our merchandise store.
Yeah, absolutely. She's desperate. She keeps asking me, when can I start? I say, you've got to be 15, so another 3 years to go. But
Damn those industrial laws.
If only child labour was back, right? But no, she...
You can get her a driver's licence, can't you?
Picking on me from Woolloomooloo again, But the answer's yes.
Hope you don't charge her as much as you charge my kids.
Your son still looks underage, Josh. He still looks 16. So anyway, head down to Heffron Park to the tennis centre there. Catch up with Maddie and the boys. They'll sort you out, or jump online at shop.rabbitohs.com.au. Now, our top 4 topic for this week, sticking with the English theme that we've been talking about, is our top 4 English players that we've seen play of all time. We thought this would be appropriate with Blake's time over in the Super League. So we might start off with you, Shannon, this week.
All right, one of my favourites. He was only at the Rabbitohs for a year, but he was just a cult hero, and that's the Yorkshire Flyer, the great Henderson Gill. He had speed, he had agility, he was strong, he was everything I wasn't as a player, and he was an excitement machine.
He said he was a good bloke.
As I said, hello. Yeah, but I remember when he came and just all the fans on the hill, they would just love him, and he scored lots of tries for the club, and he was a fantastic player, and he was a forerunner to some other obvious great Englishmen who came to us, and obviously number 2. I should have had him as number 1, actually. I think he's, we talk about tough forwards, but Sam Burgess, we're a club with some very tough, really genuinely tough men, and Sam Burgess is right up there with them. I think he was instrumental in our 2014 win, and I don't just mean his efforts and heroics on the field in the grand final night, but just instilling that toughness and the confidence to the forwards around him to really take it up to the forwards pack. So I think the Sam Burgess legacy is undisputed. Another one, being an ex-hooker, is the great Kieran Cunningham. He's one of 9 siblings, one of 10 children, actually. Blake, they must be cold those nights over there.
Yes. Not much to do in St Helens on a...
His parents obviously didn't have a TV in the bedroom.
Long winters in St Helens.
One of 10 kids, but, he was a fantastic player. I was talking to Blake about him last night. He played 496 games. His career went for 17 years, and 16 years, and he scored 175 tries, so a couple more than me, but played for the UK Lions. He's just absolutely fantastic player.
He didn't play for Italy, though.
No, he didn't, and he's lucky he didn't. I would have sorted him right out. My nickname playing was the Labrador because I was always bludging on the blind. So the great Kieran Cunningham, a hooker. But how could you go past, when you're talking about great English players, the great Cuthwin Ellery Hanley? A fantastic player, man of steel 3 times. Still as fit as a fiddle to this day. Blake and I were talking about him last night as well. He's just about to turn 60, and he did everything in rugby league, and he did just about everything in Sydney as well. With the he was a great player and very popular on and off the field. Was the great Cuthwin Ellery Hanley.
Very good, very good. Now, Ello, your top 4.
Yeah, number 1, Sam Burgess. He's been the greatest Englishman I've seen come out here, and I've seen him close up and see what he's done for the club over many years. Some of the injuries he's played with, not only the broken cheekbone in the grand final. To this day, if he comes off, I think we'd have struggled to win the game. But he just, and the number of times he'd argue with the doctor about getting back on the field. He had a really bad ankle injury once, the syndesmosis, and he went back out there, and it ended up costing him the rest of the season. But we were playing the Bulldogs in a clutch game, and he just went out there, just led by example. He had a few mistakes in him, but Jack Gibson always used to have a great line: if you're going to make a mistake, make it at 100 miles an hour. And that's when Sam made a mistake, it was at 100 miles an hour, but he put the fear of God in oppositions, and he's been great at our club. And he's my number one by quite a way, actually. I was lucky enough as a kid. We used to watch a lot of English football, the Test matches, and that we had to get up early in the mornings to watch it, and you get up with your parents and watch a lot of the older players. I remember a bloke called Tommy Bishop played back in the early 70s. I mean, I was only young then, but I've loved football, all my life, and he was just a leader as a little fella. In those days, there'd be a lot of tough stuff going on, fights and that. And he'd get in and start them, and he'd just fire his whole team up, and then Cliff Watson and the front rowers at the time used to come in and just fire him up. And he was one of the first Englishmen I really remember coming out to play football here, and I just watched him and ended up playing Cronulla, I think, and I don't know if he coached there or not, but he was one of the first Englishmen to come out and actually stay in Australia. So he was a top liner. Ellery Hanley, I played against Ellery as well. I played against Henderson Gill too, as a top liner too, but I was at Cronulla at that stage. I forgot about that. I shouldn't have mentioned that. But anyway, Ellery, he was just all class. I mean, everything he did was, top shelf. He prepared well. He had a good time off the field, as we all know. But, when it was game day and when it was training, he was out there. He had a remarkable fitness level at that stage of the game when we talk about, how the players at this stage, how much they train. I think he was one of the high-level trainers back then. Very classy, very skillful, and again, a leader. The 88 grand final, obviously Terry Lamb and Warren Wright decided we had to stop him to stop the Tigers, and they did it. That's a bit of a testament to him, to how good he was to the teams he played in. Another one going back, one of the toughest guys I ever saw play was Malcolm Reilly. And, I remember it. It's funny, I remember talking to George about the fight they had at the cricket ground that day, and George reckons what happened, Malcolm kicked George in the face on the ground and opened him up across under the lip, and then George apparently tried to get up. They were in the scuffle and said he nearly got his eye out and things like that. But that was the type of game it was back then, and he just, that was what, he loved it. He loved it. He loved getting involved in it. He was skillful too, like a lot of the British forwards at that stage. Came out here, and then coached Newcastle to success as well. So he had a big influence on the game in Australia and back home in England. And probably the last player that not many people would know, it was a front rower called Kevin Ward that played for Manly. I remember playing against him in '87, and he had a face like a robber's dog. And I tell you what, when he was running, Shannon, I was like you. I used to get on the blind side so he wouldn't come near me. But no, he was tough and he was solid, and that's when Manly had lacked a little bit of that in their game. He was one of the enforcers that he brought to the club to try and get on top of teams and that, and he did that. He was just a solid professional and hard as a rock, like. It was like tackling a brick wall when he ran. So, they're my four, Jez.
Hang on, before we go to Blake, I just want to ask: Can we get Ello a role in a job in payroll, making up the pay? He just put 50% on the top four. He just nominated 6 players.
No, but I talked about a few that you.
Well, just my pay anyway.
Okay. You want to listen a little bit better, mate. Sam Burgess. Who's the second one? Just Tommy Bishop. Ellery Hanley.
Okay.
Kevin Ward.
Sorry, mate.
That's okay.
You mentioned Cliffy Watson and a few others.
I need to pad a little bit, mate, to think about what I'm going to say.
Honourable mentions.
Of course you need some padding, Ello. Yeah.
Was that in your notes, was it?
All right, Blake, the top 4 you've seen.
Oh, Sam speaks for himself, so it's hard to say anything more than what Shannon and Ello said about Sam. And For the other three, I kind of looked at in the UK when they're looking at players who they really rate at the top. It tends to be guys who trouble Australia because that's the yardstick. If you play against Australia and you can trouble Australia and challenge them, well, then you really establish yourself as a great. Or if you dominate in Union and League, that's the other thing that kind of separates you from the rest. And so I, for the other three, I kind of went a bit off piece. Even though he's not English, he's Welsh. Jonathan Davis for me was just such a talent. He was at Widnes when they beat the Raiders in the World Club Challenge. He was amazing for Great Britain. He dominated rugby union before he came to rugby league for Wales. He was part of an amazing Welsh rugby union team, and then his try at Wembley in '94 in the Ashes Test where he kind of splits Australia open and scores, and I think the score was 4-0 at the end, and that was the thing that broke the game. He was just an amazing player, skillful, and also just a wonderful guy off the field. He's one of the few people who's held in such high regard in League and Union that he commentates for the BBC on both. He's an analyst in both. He's just a great guy, but a great player. Another guy, Paul Skullthorpe, who Australians maybe didn't see the best of because he was a bit injury prone, but his performances for Great Britain and St Helens over a long period of time were extraordinary. He was a great 6 or 13. Didn't matter where they put him. Inevitably, when he played in big finals for St Helens, they just won. And their record in that period when Daniel Ando was coach and he was there, they're unstoppable in big games. And then the final one was Jason Robinson for me, who again dominated league and union, held in high esteem by both codes, was a great player, troubled Australia whenever he played, and then went on to have a wonderful career in rugby union. And then also when he was at Wigan, they just won as well. He was just a complete winner. Probably an honourable mention for Gareth Ellis as well, who came out here and was great. Played for a long time over there, but they were my four: Sam, Jiffy, Jonathan Davis, Paul Skullthorpe, and Jason Robinson.
I just had one more to add too that I've forgotten.
One more to his top 15.
Going through the criteria that Blake spoke about. I'm a little bit older than you guys. I'm 43, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So I think Gary Schofield was a great player that came out here as well too. You know, you talk about the criteria of troubling Australians. He used to trouble us in the test matches, and he troubled the teams when he played for the Tigers out here too. So he was almost in the top 4.
Yeah, I'll go through my ones quickly because they've all been mentioned. I just want to make the point that I absolutely refuse to include Adrian Morley in my list because of what he did to our club for over a decade, playing for the Roosters. So he didn't make the list. But my number 4...
You've got to be human to make the list. If you play for the Roosters, you don't qualify.
My number 4 was Henderson Gill. My list is actually full of Bradford and Wigan players, but Henderson Gill, he was one of my first memories of following footy and his time at South, and his post-try celebrations, dancing on the field and all that sort of stuff. So Henderson Gill got my number 4. My number 3 was Jason Robinson. Interesting rumour around at one stage that he was going to come out to the NRL and come and play for us, which got a lot of people very excited, considering what he was achieving in rugby union at the time. But he always gave Australia headaches in those test matches, the way he jinked around the field and his pace. If he found a gap, it was close the gates. He was in. Ellery Hanley, which most of us mentioned, he was a big body, he had the silky skills. He was a little bit, I guess, in the John Sutton mould. He probably had a little bit more pace than Sutto, but he had all those skills. He had the magic that Sutto used to have, and I used to hate watching him play against us when I was a kid because you always knew he was going to make something happen. And as everyone else has said, Sam Burgess, he's my number 1. The confidence that he brought his teammates was unbelievable when he was playing with us. I reckon he changed the way we played our footy, brought a real hard edge to us, and again, another guy that achieved in both rugby codes. So that is my top 4. Thank you for all of your suggestions, gentlemen. Ello, I appreciated your 62 nominations you gave us.
What was one of the great things about living in the UK, Jez, was meeting a lot of those guys. Like, you saw them on TV growing up as a kid and getting up in the morning watching them, and or they came to Australia and seeing what they did, and getting to meet them and realise how humble they were and how highly they regarded their time in Australia, either at a club or on tour, and how much passion they still had for the game. You know, Jason, even though he finished his career in rugby union, would always come to the Challenge Cup final, would always come to the Super League Grand Final, bring his kids. And same with Ellery. They just still had so much passion for the game and wanted to make a contribution. And I think all of them were desperate to see Great Britain or England beat Australia in a series. I think that was the one thing that eluded them on the field and still eludes them to this day. And I think particularly the guys like Ellery and Martin Afire and that who played in the early 90s, they thought they had the team to win and the coach in Malcolm really to win, and they just couldn't quite do it. And it still haunts them. Hearing your story about 89 last week, Ello, and sort of how you still wake up and that's a great regret. That was theirs the same. They thought they should have beaten Australia in 90, 92 or 94 and they didn't quite do it, and it still haunts them to this day.
Yeah. Well, come on, Aussie, come on, I say.
That's bad luck, isn't it?
Poor old
Hard blues.
I've clearly been weighed down by all the stories. Developed some sympathy for me.
They sent us out here.
All right, we'll be back in a moment. Now, we spoke about this last week, Rabbitohs Plus. It's a new initiative from the Rabbitohs. It provides everyday services for Rabbitohs members and supporters at some great deals. You can grab mobile phone plans, there's travel deals, home and contents insurance, credit cards, car insurance, home loans, all sorts of things through Rabbitohs Plus, and you can get some great deals being a Rabbitohs supporter or a Rabbitohs member. So to check out Rabbitohs Plus, all you need to do is visit plus.rabbitohs.com.au, and Blake, it's started to take off.
It has. A big shout out to Lou, who I sat next to last night at the menu log, who's a member from God's country at Booker Bay up there on the Central Coast. She proudly showed the credit card when we were sitting down having a chat, and she was overwhelmed by how good the customer service was with Community First Credit Union. She said it was just amazing that she applied and within a couple of hours got a call from a consultant and had the card in her hands within a couple of days. So I don't think her husband was that keen on how much she was using it, but certainly...
I can't believe you made her pay for last night's dinner.
Blake's actually got the Rabbitohs credit card too, and yeah, it's a great product. He was telling me he'd lost his previous credit card, and I was asking, I said, did you report it to police? And he said, no, why would I? I said, because you stolen credit card. He said, no, I didn't report it to police because the thief was spending less than Claire.
Shannon's up to his third joke of the week already.
He is.
Do I get credited in advance?
If they're funny, you will.
All right,
You're on
Rabbitohs
fire today, mate. You are on fire.
Rabbitohs Plus, jump on to plus.rabbitohs.com.au to find out more. Now, our trivia question from last week was when South Sydney played our final home game at Redfern Oval as our main home ground in 1987, who scored the final points for the Rabbitohs and how did they score? Now, we gave you the clue. The final score was Canberra 26, South Sydney 2, which probably gives away a bit of a hint about how they scored, but who they scored. Shannon, did you do your homework on this one?
I did, and I remember that game clearly. That's in an era when we're obviously struggling a little bit, and we were right in that game up until the kickoff, and then unfortunately the Raiders ran away with it. But who scored those points is the esteemed gentleman to my left, the great Mark Ellison. Well done, Ello.
Thanks, Shannon.
Tell us about the decision.
He scored 2 points, which was more than the tackles he made on that day, apparently.
Tell us about the decision.
And less than the missed ones.
Tell us about the decision to take the 2 points early.
Well, I think Mum had backed me for first point score. No, we got a chance to. I think we had a win behind us in the first half, early in the game, I think, from memory, and took the 2 points, and that's all we got. We led 2-0 and lost 26-2.
Were you playing in that game, Shannon, with Laurie Daly running at you all day, like you told us last week?
No, I wasn't. I was, you're struggling. Oh, you know, people talk about the 62-0 loss to the Roosters at the football stadium, and, you know, everyone talks about how bad it was. How bad was I? I was on the bench for reserve grade that day. That's couldn't make the side that got 62-0, but I couldn't even make the reserve grade side, the side under that. So the short answer is no, Jeremy.
Our trivia question this week is: Mark Ellison scored 2 points. Did Shannon Donato eat more or less than 2 crunchy hot dogs from the kiosk on the western side that day?
You've been paying attention.
Well, just got me thinking about hot dogs. I love a footy hot dog.
Can you give him a tough question, Jess? The funny thing about that day, Wayne was the co-coach of Canberra, with Don Ferner, and they did a number on us.
You would have met him a couple of weeks later in the semis.
Yeah, in the semis, yeah. We might get Mavo on to talk about that one next time we do the show.
Focus on the win against Balmain the week before.
That's right.
That's tough.
That's a joke. He knows I can say that one.
Give him another plug and make him feel better.
Absolutely. His right of reply will come in Rabbitohs Radio.
Well, mate, don't worry. He's got plenty in bag me about. I'm sure he'll find it too. No, but Canberra that year, that's when they just started to come to prominence, and they went on to the grand final and had a tough game against Manly. Kevin Ward played in the team for Manly that day, and they just had remarkable attacking ability, you know, and they had some great players like Daly, Belcher was around, Meninga was there, Dean Lance in the back row.
Chris O'Sullivan,
yeah. So they were a good team, and it was a pity it was the last game at Redfern, but anyway,
decent coach as well.
Yeah. He went on to go okay in his career.
Had a little bit of success.
He's not a bad bloke.
Well, we'll move on now to our trivia question for next week, and sticking with our English theme, we mentioned Henderson Gill earlier on, who played for the Rabbitohs back in 1985. I want to know, how many tries did he score for South Sydney in that season? And the hint is he played 8 games for us in 1985, so that might give you a bit of a lead into the answer. But we'll come back with the answer next week in our trivia question segment. Now, this fantastic podcast, and I can say that from the feedback we've been getting over the last week, I've had that many people come up to me saying that they enjoyed it and had a good laugh at you two blokes. So.
Who was that, your mum and your wife?
My 5-year-old daughter. You funny, Daddy. You funny, Daddy.
Shout out to Kieran.
So it is brought to us by the great people at What If. And if you're looking for your next epic holiday, maybe a long weekend with your mates, or you need to get to the next game, which of course is next week against the Melbourne Storm down in Melbourne, then it's time to What If it. What If has great deals on accommodation, flights, car hire and more. Plus, because they're the official travel partner of the South Sydney Rabbitohs, you can head to whatif.com/Rabbitohs and use the promo code Rabbitohs15 and you'll save 15% on selected hotels. Now, conditions apply with that, but make sure you head to whatif.com/Rabbitohs and use the promo code Rabbitohs15 to save that 15% on selected hotels. What if it's Aussie for travel? I jumped on to whatif.com/Rabbitohs last week and booked my flights and accommodation for Melbourne. It's a great service that they provide.
It is. They're a wonderful company, and big shout out to Daniel Finch, who's a great supporter of this podcast and the club in general. But they are such an easy service to use. On you, Jez, I'm about to jump on and book mine for Melbourne next week. It's so easy. You get your travel, you get your accommodation, you get your transfers done really quickly. It's a fantastic service.
Very good. What if it is Aussie for travel? I was going to say the moment we've all been waiting for, but we haven't had to wait for it because he's given us a few little teasers throughout the show. It is Shannon's joke of the week. Let's have a listen to what he's got for us.
Okay, geez, that's a big intro, Jez. I feeling a bit of pressure. But, just, you know, the talking about the travel and the trip to the bush to Mudgee this weekend and out in the countryside. Reminded me about an article I read about the Ivan Milat and the serial killers and the backpackers are, it's not a laughing subject, but one of the testimonies was, he was walking through the Belangolo State Forest, just him and the backpacker, and it was night and it was lightning and there was thunder. And the backpacker turns to Ivan and says, "Geez, it's scary out here." And Ivan turns and looks back and says, "What are you scared for? I've got to walk back to the car by myself." Apologies to any serial killers out there.
Or serial killer victims if you're somehow listening to the podcast.
Well, they won't be listening to it.
You never know. We've got wide reach, Ella. Wide reach. You never know what you can get these days inside some of those coffins. But anyway, well done, Shannon. Hello, we're back to you next week.
Another joke.
Another one. So you've got 7 days to think about it. All the pressure's already. He's already.
Has anyone got an asthma pump?
We'll be back in just a moment. Well, thank you everyone for listening. You can contact us with topic suggestions by filling out the form at rabbitohs.com.au/podcasts or contact us via Twitter using @SSFC Rabbitohs and the hashtag Top4Podcast. Also send us some pics of where you're listening to the Top 4 podcast each week. We mentioned all the different places where we've got listeners in Philippines, PNG, Norway, Hong Kong, all over the world. So we want to try and spread that listenership as much as we can. Don't forget to write us a glowing review if you think we deserve one, and give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts, and hit that subscribe button to automatically add our podcast to your feed every week.
Where do I send the review to, Jess?
It's a 5-star rating system. Hello's review will have 8 stars.
That's pretty good for you.
He said he was trying to get some credits up for his joke of the week, so he's going okay. Don't forget to tune into our other podcasts on the Rabbitohs Podcast Network, including our regular media conferences leading up to games, including the highly entertaining interviews with our head coach, Wayne Bennett. They'll all start next week. We'll also have our audio version of the Rabbitohs Insider, and you can also tune into Chaps, Mavo and Brownie on the Rabbitohs Radio Podcast for more hardcore footy chats and a great laugh as well. They do a great job, the boys, and I'm sure Mavo might have a bit of a response for Ello this week.
Well, as long as he leaves the major semi-final from 1989 out of it, it'll be okay. All right? I'll say no more. There's probably about 5,000 listeners out there too want to still slash my throat as a result.
And his wife's one of them.
Very good. Oh, Shannon, hello. Thanks for joining us as usual here in the Kingsford studios. It's been a good laugh.
Thanks, Jez.
Thanks, Jez.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Blake, for coming in and joining us.
No, thank you. It's been honestly great to be here, and as I said, very honoured to be the first guest.
Very good, very good. We'll get some more guests on very soon. We'll be back next week with more from the Rabbitohs Top 4 podcast. Of course, it's powered by Audio Technica and proudly presented by the great team at What If. We will see you then.
Thanks for listening to the Rabbitohs Top 4 podcast, powered by Audio Technica and proudly presented by What If, official travel and pathways partner of the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Support the club and visit whatif.com/Rabbitohs to book your next trip. Don't forget to use the code Rabbitohs15 to get 15% off select hotels. Conditions apply. What If? It's Aussie for travel. Please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Up the Rabbitohs.